With the help of Hashem, we are learning Sukah Daf Zayin. We're going to start on Daf Zayin Amad of 4 lines from the top of the Amid. We just began the Sugya yesterday discussing that we paskin like the sheet of the Chachamim, that a Sukkah only has to have 3 walls, and actually the 3 walls don't have to be full walls, only 2 have to be proper walls, minimally 7 tfachim, as long, as wide as you want your Sukkah to be. And however, the 3rd wall, midoiraisa, only has to be a tefach. And we began to discuss exactly where should that tefach be placed. And we began discussing prior to where the tefach is placed is that the 2 walls should be right angled, one touching the other. And on that, we had Rav, we had a challenge against Rav, but Rav said that the 3rd wall is going to be going out of either of the 2 ends, because when you have 2 walls that are right angled, there are only 2 ends of the wall that are open. You can extend the 3rd wall from either of those sides, and they're going to be going parallel, the one in the same direction of the one across it. Okay, now we're going to start today learning the sheet of Rav Simon. Rav Simon holds, according to most Rishonim, that he agrees with Rav on a biblical level, but midrabanan, he wants for the 3rd wall to be placed in a way where you create a halachic 7 tefach wall by using lavud and by using the concept of rubai kekulei. Then we will discuss what were to happen if the 2 proper walls are not right angled, but we're going to call them, they are placed like a mavui. Now, the mavui of Sukkah Daf Zayin is what we will call a mavui mefulash, which means a open mavui. It's 2 walls that are pushed parallel one to the other, not right angled. There we will see, for sure, on a rabbinic level, maybe even on a Torah level, that the 3rd wall, not so pashut. You can't say the 3rd wall has to be a tefach, and we will see how then the 3rd wall has to be placed. We're going to have many more limitations from Rava or Rabba on the 3rd wall, and just giving everyone a heads up that in Shulchan Aruch, b'poyel mamish, halacha l'maisa, when we place a minimally sized 3rd wall, we make the 3rd wall a full 7 tefachim. And all of that is midrabanan, and then we're going to learn many other details about how we got there, about the 3rd wall. The Gemara then is going to go on to say the following. We have dinei mechitzas by Sukkos. We have dinei mechitzas by Shabbos. And as we will see, sometimes one is lenient, sometimes the other is lenient, that we will say the following migul, that if there is a sukkah, that mitzad hilchas sukkah, it's good enough. Let's begin with our case. You have 2 full walls, and on halacha l'moshe Sinai, the 3rd wall is only a tefach. Guys, for hilchas Shabbos, if you remember, even if we're not going to follow the sheet of the Rambam, we're going to follow the other Rishonim. You need to have 3 full walls to create a Reshus HaYachid, Mido Eiraisa. Midrabanan, you need more than that for Hilchas Shabbos. But we say Migu, that if you have a sukkah, let's say there's a sukkah right in front of the front doors of your house. Now the sukkah is on an area that would have been theoretically at a Reshus HaRabim, but it's a sukkah. Migu, that for a sukkah it's considered a enclosed area, even though it only has 2 walls and a tefach, even though normally for Hilchas Shabbos it's not called a Reshus HaYachid, since for Sukkah it's considered a kosher, so for that Shabbos Sukkahs, it's going to be considered kosher. We will actually have 3 applications of this migul, ultimately in both directions, as we'll speak out. If it's considered an enclosed area for one, it's going to be considered an enclosed area of the other. On Daf Zayin Amud Beis, we're going to have the following machlokes tanoim. We learned in the Mishnah that a sukkah that has more sunlight than shade is invalid. What needs to create the shade? The schach. What happens if the schach are creating more shade than sunlight? But being that the walls are not full walls, they're not solid walls, so the sunlight comes through the walls, so there is b'poil more sunlight than shade because of the doifim. We're going to learn a machlekes tanoim whether that's a problem or not, and ultimately the last topic will be whether a sukkah has to be fit to be a diras kava, whether it has to be fit to be a fixed dwelling. We're going to see many machloikis of tanoim that are contingent on this question, the last one of which will be a circular sukkah. People did not live then in a circular building. Could be these things change with time. So what happens if you have a sukkah that's shaped like a circle? Whether the very fact that no one lives in such a structure as a diras keva, whether that will invalidate the sukkah or not, that's again subject to al-machlokes tanoim. We will, God willing, hit today. We're going to learn achedim that holds that it's not okay because it's not fit to be a diras keva, and God willing, we'll pick up tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a whole daf of math. Shitas Rabbi Yechanan that disagrees with that. That holds that around a circular sukkah is kosher. The only question will be, how big does it have to be? How do you measure the 7 tvachim? That's going to be the pi and chevra and much, much more. Today's a day that if you have pictures, it's helpful. If you have the wrong pictures, it's terrible. And without pictures comes a good eight together. We have time. It's a relatively small daf. Let's go through this step by step. So everyone should just remember that until now, when we began the Sunya and Dav Avam days, we were speaking about two walls that were right angle, and Rav was more lenient than Rav Kahana and Avasi. They felt that the third wall has to be placed in a certain diagonal in a way that it makes you feel like you're surrounded by fuller size. No, if the two walls are kehil chassan, that means they are right angled, the third wall can come out from either one of the two open ends and you're good to go. And again, and halacha l'Moshe Sinai, the size of that third wall is only 1 tefach. However, Rabbi Simon or Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi say, and let's learn that what they are saying is in agreement to the above, but only midoiraisa, only halacha l'Moshe Sinai. The following is a rabbinic limitation that no, don't just place the wall down. First of all, oisei loy tafach soichek. Begin with a wall that is in the size of a expanded tefach. Now, let's go, guys, that a tefach is 4 finger breadths. Every time you speak about a finger breadth, just to make it clear, it's the width of a thumb. Expanded means that you want to have a tefach and a little bit. It's like when you have your fist, you can have your fist closed tightly, and you can have your fist very loose. If your fist is very loose, then the size of your tefach will be a bit bigger. He wants, as we'll see in a moment, to come to 4 tvachim. How are you going to come to 4 tvachim? How are you going to come to 4 tvachim? If the tefach is going to be a little bit bigger than a tefach, and and you will place it not on a diagonal. Again, you place it straight, parallel the wall opposite. This with the picture that you're putting up is not the right picture because we're not speaking about a sukkah that the two walls are parallel. We're speaking about a sukkah that have a right angle. Now, guys, put it in your head. If you put up this third wall, which is only a tefach, a bit, if you place it a little bit less than 3 tefachim from either side that you're choosing, based on the din of halacha l'Moshe Sinai lavud, it's as if it's annexed. It's as if it's congruent. It's as if it's touching. Now you realize why you want the tefach to be soichek, because since you're placing it a little bit less than 3 tefachim near the wall, because if it's 3 tefachim, it's already not lavud, but you want to compensate for that less with a little bit more wall. So between the little bit less than 3 tefachim and the tefach that's expanded, Yachap, what's going on over here? How many tefachim do you have? You have 4 tefachim. You have you understand the tefach and the lavut. Now there's another rule, which is called rubai kakulai. So since the minimum size wall has to be 7 tefachim, if you have a halachic 4 tefach wall, even though begashmius it's only 1 and a little bit, but because of lavut it's considered 4. So 4 out of 7 is the majority. Rubai kakulai.
Rabbi, what's that tefach?
That's the wrong picture. Please don't put up this picture. That picture is in the next case. Yeah.
Rabbi, what's an expanded tefach soichek? What does that mean? Please.
It just means, Samach, that if the tefach is the exact tefach, you're not giving a little bit of leeway, and you're placing it a little bit less than 3 tefachim from the wall, right? Because once you went 3 tefachim, then you're not going to hit your 4th tefach mark. And we're looking to hit Rubai Kekuloi is not going to be, 3.5 and a little bit. We don't go that way. We are looking to get 4 tefachim. To get 4 tefachim, since Lavud doesn't allow you to go a full tefachim away, you have to be a little bit less than the 3 tefachim. So you want for the physical wall to be a tefach in a little bit. And the way we word it is to have a tefach, but it should be soichek, it should be expanded. Good, Samach. Okay. And Chol Pachus Mishloisha Samach L'Doifen Kelavud Damim. And Rashi, amongst other Rishonim, 9 lines from the top of the Amid, adds the words Nimtza Ruboy Shel Doifen Asoi. Notice that Rashi wants to explain it. We're not just using Lavud. We're using Lavud to get to 4 Tvachim. But what's the magic of 4 Tvachim? There is no magic to 4 Tvachim. The minimum size wall is 7 Tvachim. So we're looking to get the roiv of a 7 Tefach wall. Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda. Now goes the case that the Kevin kept on putting up. Another case. Not that the 2 walls that are Kehil Chasan are right angled. No. What happens? Sukah ha'asuya kimavui. They are placed like a mavui, meaning a mavui that's opened at both ends. So the 2 walls are parallel one to the other. Nothing is touching anything. And now you want to place the 3rd wall. And we're learning again, the 3rd wall has to be a tefach. So Rav Yehuda says, that's kosher. The 2 walls don't have to be right angle. And according to Rav Yehuda, on a level of God, on Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, v'oisa tefach, the 3rd wall only has to be a tefach. Ma'amidoi l'chol ruach she'yirtza. By the way, here you have 4 options. In the right angle, begashmius, when you have a right angle, there's only 2 ends that are opened. Once you have 2 parallel walls, then you're going to put it in any one of the 4 corners that you want, and you're good. And on this, if you think Rab Simon added the rabbinic limitation, before his now will be much more. Because the very fact that the 2 walls are parallel and not right angled, it makes the area in between the walls less like you are indoors, like you're being surrounded by, you're being hugged by Hashem. Rab Simon, on a mavui, on a sukkah, like a mavui, oiso like pas arbo mashu. Here, midrabanan, it's not enough to have 1 tefach soichek. You see, the 1 tefach soichek is the picture that you put up. We moved on. Let's not confuse. We have to keep on the pictures over here. But if you want to add midrabanan, the 3rd wall, it already has to be arba'a umashuhum. And you're putting it bepachus mishloisha samach l'doifen, which is either wall. Again, once you're using lavud is only less than 3. So you want for this pass, you want for this wall, it's not enough for it to be 4, because 4 and less than 3 is not 7. You mamish want to have with lavud at the ganze 7 tvachim. V'chol pachas mishloisha samach l'doifen is kalavud dami. Now that's a big difference. In other words, here his limitation is much greater. When it's right angle, all he added was the wall should be a tefach soichik. And use lavud. And then with lavud, you only have ruboy. Here, no, he wants for the wall to be 4 and a little. And not to place it right angle touching, to place it within lavud. Use the most of your coat of lavud. So the Gemara is asking, why is it in the right angled wall, the first case of today, the Ka'amanat, that even Rab Simon, who's being machmer on a rabbinic level, sagie, all he added in the wall was tefach soichik, an expanded tefach. Well, Mishnah, Hacha, in the second case we learned today, where the sukkah is called a mavui-like sukkah, the ka'amrat that Rab Simon is adding, that you need to have pas arba. And guys, remember, pas arba means 4 plus. We're good. It's simple. 4 plus a little bit less than 3, you have the 7. So the Gemara says that we want to make it clear that it's definitely ideal for the 2 walls to be placed right angled. Hassan, in the first case, since the ikesh the fun skill Hassan, they are right angle. Now, guys, why is right angle better? Let's go back to what we concluded yesterday. You in the sukkah should ideally feel that you're not in a passageway. You're in a home. You want to be hugged. Right angle, at least in that side, you are embraced. If the 2 walls are placed kimavui, you don't feel. You feel like you're in a hallway. You don't feel like you're in a dwelling place. So over there, since at least the 2 are kel chasen, so even though, so for Midrash, Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, 1 tefach. Good. Rab Simon wants to be machmed midrabanan. Fine. All he needs was make the tefach a little bit more soichek, and like we explained, and place it by the boundary of lavut. So you create 4, and then rubai, then you have rubai. But over here, by the mavoi, since the lekesh tedefanis, you don't have 2 walls properly. You have 2 walls. It means you don't have them properly. If you're placing this past this wall, that's 4 and a bit, within 3 by the boundary of lavut, then midrabanan, it's still okay. But Eloi, says the Gemara weiter, Omar Rava, guys, Rava is going back to the right angle wall. And again, we're going L'shitas Chachamim. 2 walls have to be Kihel Chasam, right angled. Halacha l'Moshe Misinai, the 3rd wall only has to be 1 tefach, nekuda. However, midrabanan, says Rava, ve'ena niteres ela b'tzuras ha'pesach. Wow. Haha. You know what you need to do, midrabanan? Take the 1 tefach wall, Rashi says, and break it in half. Each half, my friends, now is only a half a tefach. Place, if we have a picture that will be helpful, place half a tefach touching the right angle. That's a good picture, touching the right angle. Place the other half a tefach all the way at the end of the 3rd wall. Ke'ilu, you have to make a full 3rd wall, but use the tzuras ha'pesach, what we call today the eruv. So you have a half a tefach width on one side, a half a tefach on the other side, and you have to have some kana on top. And then midrabanan, it's considered good enough. And Rav is still calling it a tefach wall. The 3rd wall is only a tefach because the width of each half has to be a half a tefach. Now that's a huge chumrah. That's a huge chumrah. Guys, even in Eruvin, if you remember, you don't need to have for the upright sides that are holding up the tzuras ha'pesach a minimum width. But that's the version of Rava's statement. Number 2, Ika da Amri, Rava was not that machmer, that Amar Rava, that Rava is saying, Viniteres, Nami b'tzuras ha'pesach. Rava heard what Rab Simon said. Rava agreed with Rab Simon. That midrabanan, as long as the tefach is soichek, and it's right by the boundary of lavud, so you created a 4 tefach wall, and that's rubai, that's good enough. Rava's adding that there is another option that you can use, and that is making it tzuras ha'pesach. Now Rashi says, according to the 2nd version, at least Rava here, he's saying that if you opt to make a tzuras ha'pesach, we don't want these pictures yet, you don't need that the width of each pas should be a half a tefach. It's either midrabanan, tefach soichek, lavud, have rubai, or make a tzuras ha'pesach. I'm reading inside Rashi. V'niteres nami b'tzuras ha'pesach. Mashma the tefach sheshoninu hainu either k'deparish Rab Simon Liel that oises setima tefach eitz ala yotzi for also Rav Lameimar the im also tzuras ha'pesach al pnei kol hadoifen, not like the picture. If you want, you can make a proper tzuras ha'pesach, and then you won't even need to have the 3rd wall being a total of a tefach. You need that, it can be a mashu on one side, a mashu on the other side, right? And the koida and the kana al gabein. Okay, the ikad amri, the 3rd version of what Rava said, Amar Rava, that v'tzricha nami tzuras ha'pesach. In other words, wow, aside of you needing to place the tefach wall, which is really a tefach soichek, within otazoi, within less than 3 tvachim from the wall. Aside of that, Rava added, you have to mamish complete that wall. But you don't complete that wall with the wall. Now make a tzuras ha'pesach, continuing, not going closer to the right angled wall, going to the end of the location of your sukkah. It means Rava is agreeing with Rab Simon, plus you have to add a tzuras ha'pesach.
And there needs to be 3 tvachim between tzuras ha'pesach and the 2nd wall.
And there has to be less, no, it's the pas should also be placed. He doesn't even want for you to place the pas all the way at the beginning. He wants for you to use the pas, so at least between the pas and lavud, at least you already have a rubai wall. You're already beginning with a rubai of 7. And like we mentioned in the intro, that what we paskin, we're not that machmer, but we do paskin that the 3rd wall itself should be 7 tvachim. Very important. Many people don't know that. They say, it's a tefach. No, you need to have 7 tvachim. Rav Ashi ashkechel Rav Kahana, that he made the tefach soichek and he made it tzuras HaPesach. So Amar Leiloi Savar Mar Lohad Rava, the Amar Rava, because Rav Ashi heard that Rava said either or. No, it's Rava is agreeing with Rav Simon that midrabanan you have to be more machman on the third wall. And didn't Rava say v'niteres nami b'tzuras HaPesach? Nami means either like Rav Simon, and that's good enough, or make a tzuras HaPesach. So Amar Lei, to which Rav Kahana said no. Anaki idach lishna the Rava sfirali. The Amar, that was the third version of Rava. The Amar Rava v'tzrichanami tzuras HaPesach. Gevaldik. Okay, moving on. Shtayim ki'olchasa. Back to the Mishnah, and the third, right, only has to be a tefach. So Omar Rava, now here either it's Rava, the Bach says it's Rava, so just to speak out, it could be it's Rava, but just we'll stay Rava because that's the way we have it in the Gemara itself. And the Nakuda from now until Amud Beis, like we spoke on in the intro, is that you have Dinei Mechitzas for Sukah, you have Dinei Mechitzas for Shabbos, and they are not the same. But the way Rashi learns, but Shabbos Sukkos, Omar Rava v'chein l'Shabbos. And that's, he doesn't have to say anything more than that. Guys, we remember from Masechta Shabbos, even if we're going to say that to create a Reshus HaYachid, biblically, you need to have 3 mechitzas, you need to have 3 full mechitzas. If you don't have 3 full mechitzas and closing in, now Midrabanan, guys, we know this, Midrabanan, 3 mechitzas is not enough for you to say the area is a Reshus HaYachid. Right? That was the whole dinner we learned in the beginning of Mavui, of Eruvin. That you can have a mavui she'eino mefulish, that's covered, that's closed from 3 sides, still not enough. You have to put a lechi, you have to put a koidam. Let's just speak biblically. If biblically, when is an area Reshus HaYachid? When you have mechitzos separating it from Reshus HaRabim or from a karmelis from all 3 sides. Sukah, we're saying that you need to have 2 walls and a tefach. Let's go with Rab Simon's first version. Yeah, okay, say that you place it within Lavud. You don't have that area fully enclosed. Says Rav, I know that. So let me ask you a question. Are you allowed to carry from your house into that sukkah? On Shabbos Sukkahs? Yes. That on Shabbos Sukkahs, it will then be also considered a bona fide Reshus HaYachid. Why? Migu dahav yedoifen le'inyan sukkah. So in Shabbos, and by the way, if you do not subscribe to the Chumrah of Rab Simon, then even the picture that Kavan put is also good. In other words, that's the point. Whatever it is, good. Since you consider this a sukkah, if it's considered a sukkah, you can't call that anything other than a Reshus HaYachid. Eis ve'yabaya, do we have such a migu application? No, v'hatayim we learned in a brayse. Doifen sukkah kedoifen Shabbos. A sukkah wall is the same as a Shabbos wall. We'll explain this in a moment. Ubelvad. However, so if you remember, what did we learn? That how do you create a wall? Especially when that's the case in the Gemara. When people are traveling, so they're only in one area temporarily for Shabbos one time. So we allow them to make the minimum type of wall, which would be considered a wall. And that's using Loved for the entirety of the wall. So imagine people are traveling, you're out mamish in the field. What you have is you have beams that can be very narrow. If you put one beam within 3 tvachim of the neighboring beam, so it's considered Loved. And you continuously surround the area that you would like to carry in with such beams. In other words, the walls are only vertical. By the way, the same thing will be only horizontal. Once the walls are trellis-like, it's much better. That's not a b'di'evet. But when you have the beams only going either vertical or horizontal, then b'di'evet it's okay because of lavut. Now, guys, let's remember, no, take that away. Let's remember that there was another rule when it comes to mechitzos, and that is that you want for it to be parutz meruba. You want it to be amud meruba ala parutz. You want for when you look at all of the mechitzos that it should be more closed than open. Guys, lavud means closed. It means if you have the skinniest of vertical beams, one, and next, within 3 tfachim, next. Begashmias, it's more open than closed. It's parutz merum ala oimid, but halachically it's considered closed. But guys, don't forget that you won't do that because less than 3 tfachim you can't go in and out. You will make open passageways. So the Braisa, they were saying, Seder, First of all, that's a good mechitza. Second of all, you will make gaps of much more than 3 tvachim as a Pesach. Just make sure that the psachim don't amount to more open than closed. That's the next line in the Braisa. One second. The Yisera, okay. For the majority. And Rashi adds, but you can make psachim, you can make opens, but make sure that the open area should not be more than the lavud closed areas. What's bothering you?
What does it mean? Like, if you make a Pesach, like, is it small poles?
You can make a Pesach up to 10 amas without having any poles in between. You are allowed to make psachim in this mechitza. But now measure the width of the psachim, measure the width of the remaining areas of wall, and make sure that it's not parutz meruba alo oimet. Now continues the Braisa, the Yisera, Shabbos al Sukah. Shabbos is therefore more stringent than Sukah. Shabbos einon niteres elo bo'imim al parutz. Even though we allow for you to make certain psachim, but we stay strong, it has to ultimately be more walled area than open area. Mashe enken besukah. What's the mashe enken besukah? Guys, don't forget that a sukkah, you are beginning with only 2 walls and a tefach. If you would make a Pesach in that kanad area, now a sukkah wall can also just be kana, and leave less than 3 tvachim in between. But if you're going to make only 2 walls and a tefach, if you're going to make even 1 Pesach in that kana area, says the Braisa, we will add that Pesach to the open side of the sukkah. Don't forget, the sukkah is missing 1 wall completely on one side, and from the other side, you have almost all opening aside of the tefach. By sukkah, don't make a Pesach, because we will include the Bechlal unwalled area with the Psachim, and you may not end up with a Pesach, with Parutz Meruba Alo Oimet. Now the question is why? Why don't we say Migu? Why don't we say that if for Shabbos it's considered good, if for Sukah it's considered good, then why would it not be good for Shabbos? For Sukah, right, if you have 2 walls and a tefach, in the 2 walls, you can have 1 Pesach. Because you're not looking at the totality of the enclosed area, you're looking only at the 2 walls and the 1 tefach. And why don't we say, since it's good for Sukkah, it's good for Shabbos? Okay.
So on Shabbos, they're taking the unwalled whole wall plus the almost second and the Pesach and saying that's more open than the rest.
That's what it says over here. 1 second. Rashi 10 lines under the Gemara. The Sagile b'shtayim kil chazim v'shlishus afilu tefach v'afilu oilo psachim v'shtei defan is very good. Yeah, no, it's on Sukkah. Correct, exactly. That on Sukkah the din should be that we allow in the 2 walls and the tefach we allow a Pesach or 2. But don't forget that now that you add that with the other, so for Sukkah it sounds like for Sukkah it's good, but for Shabbos it's not good. But why don't we say migu that it's good for Sukkah, it's good for Shabbos? Back inside the Gemara. My love, does it not mean, the guys, the second narrow line, that Yisera, the Shabbos in Sukkahs, that Shabbos is more stringent than the rest of Sukkahs? No, it's as far as eating. By the way, even on Shabbos Sukkahs, according to this understanding, you can eat in there. You can't carry in there. It's kosher for Sukkah. Why? Because you have 2 walls and a tefach. You have 2 psachim opened in the walls. So what? So what? In the 2 walls and a tefach, you have more closed than open. For Shabbos, you have to look at the whole area. The whole area, you can't have more open than closed. So l'chayra v'lemrin and migu. So answers Rava or Rabba, no, that's not what the Braisa meant. Lo Yisera Shabbos the Alma Shabbos the Sukkah. What the Braisa wanted to say is when it comes to the Hilchas Shabbos, you can make this mechitza of kanim. You have to make sure that you don't have more parutz merum ala amud. So therefore, Shabbos, if you would have only 2 sides and a little bit closed, and you would have a Pesach, then it would not be kosher. And for Sukkos, we allow you to make 2 walls and a Tefach, and you are allowed to have a Pesach in those 2 walls. But if it's Shabbos, Sukkos, then indeed the Braisa will allow you to use such a Sukkah even to carry in. Because migu, it's going to be kosher for Hilchas Sukkah, so then we consider it already an enclosed area, even for Shabbos, and you're not going to be violating Chaytza'ah if you're taking from your house directly into such a Sukkah. Asked the Gemara, if taka we say migu, then why wouldn't we say it in the reverse? Iyachi litni nami, that you say the Sukah the Alma, Sukah the Shabbos, that there is a certain chumrah, Sukkahs, right, which is not Shabbos, over Sukkah that falls out on Shabbos. Why don't we go migu in the opposite direction? The Ilu Sukah the Alma, what did we learn? Boi, Tefach, Soichek. Tefach Soichek means, let's go with Rab Simon, or forget about Rab Simon. When you have an area and you want to close the open side, let's go to the beginning of Eruvin. The din of a lechi, there is no minimum width for the lechi. It can be as skinny as you want. If you remember the dinim over there, the koira has to have a thickness that it can hold a chatziyah, a half a brick. The lechi can be skinny. Over here, the din is that when you place the one wall, there is a minimum width. And following Rab Simon, it's not just a tefach, it's a expanded tefach. The ilu sukkah the Shabbos loiboyam tefach soichek v'sagi b'lechi. Guys, what's the din? If you remember from Eruvin, if you have a mavui that is mefulash, a mavui that's open, when will this mavui biblically be closed, not rabbinically? You know what you need? One lechi. You have two parallel walls. I know that it's not enough midrabanan. If you have two parallel walls, so now it's considered a side of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds it's already a Reshus HaYachid, if you remember. But the Chachamim hold now it's open on both sides. It's considered a Reshus HaRabim. If you put one lechi on either side, at least midoi writes it's a Reshus HaYachid. Now hold on. When you have two parallel walls, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, forget about the rabbinics, the third wall has to be at least a tefach. So the question is, will we say that if you have this mavi mefulash with only a skinny lechi and you threw schach on top of it, are we allowed to say that during the weekdays it's not a kosher sukkah because you don't have two walls and a tefach? You have two walls and a lechele. But since for Shabbos it's considered a reshus hayachid, so migu that it's good for Shabbos, why don't we say it that way? If we say migu, that's what he's asking. The ilu, again, the third line from the bottom. The ilu sukkah the Shabbos, for the dinim of Shabbos, we should say leiboy tefach soichik and besagi v'lechi. The ha'at hu the amrat. You yourself clearly said that sichech al gabi mavi. That's a mavi open on both sides. Sheyesh lechi. Kosher means you said it's kosher biblically, right? So why don't we say that? Why don't we say that it's a kosher sukkah?
Only for Shabbos.
Only for Shabbos. If we subscribe to the concept of migu.
Isn't that only when the walls are parallel?
When the walls are parallel. So in that case, when the walls are parallel, we learned today that here you have to be machmer more than the tefach, but at least you need a tefach. For Hilchas Shabbos, I'm not midoi raisa alechi on either side is enough. It's no longer midoi raisa. It's called a reshus hayachid. So say migu. So the Gemara says, how can we say it? How can we say it? There was no need for him to say it. There was no need for him to say it. Because, guys, Shabbos is a much more stringent din than Sukkah. Shabbos, you chayv skila if you don't keep Shabbos. Sukkah, it's a big mitzvah, but it's not chayv skila. Once he said that since it's good for a Sukkah, it's good for Shabbos, that means we're going from something less stringent to something more stringent. It's self-understood that once something is Hilchas Shabbos-wise, is considered an enclosed area, which is mavi mefulish with a lechi on one side, for sure for sukkah, it's a kosher sukkah. Let's read it inside. Because that was the statement of Rabbi v'chein l'Shabbos. The normal case, you have two right angle and you have one tefach, and so this is good for sukkah. So he says, it was a reshus hayachid. If you're going mikilta lachamirta, which is a big chiddush, you can argue maybe for sukkah it's good enough, but for Shabbos you have a higher standard than mechamirta lakilta like kolchchein. But indeed, we taka say it. Two applications of migu. We're going to learn now a third application of this migu. Gufa Amar, whether it's Rava or Rab again. Daf Zayin Amid Beis. Like he taka said it. We wanted to know why the Brisa didn't say it, but it's fine. That sichech al gabe mavui sheyesh beilechi it's kesheiro. Now, you should know that actually Rava or Rabba made a third statement. What was the third statement? Same concept. Sichech al gabe pasei b'rois. We just mentioned the pasei b'rois, that when you had wells that were dug on the side of the roads going to Yerushalayim, and the Chachamim wanted for you to have an easier time on Shabbos, what would be the challenge? The water that's in the well is considered in a Reshus HaYachid. The area around the well either will be a Reshus HaRabim, if anything, it's going to be a Carmelis, which means that on a rabbinic level, you may not take the water out of the well. Now, Mela, a person can bend over. That was the whole sugya. If you bend over, but how are you going to give it to your animals? So we allowed for a minimum type of partition to say that when you are inside these well boards, and really, you're talking about, normally you need to have amud meruba ala parutz. Oh, here it's parutz meruba ala amud. Here, all you need to have is each side of the board has to be one amma. One arm on one side, one arm on the other side. And if you are inside this enclosed area, for Hilchas Shabbos, it's a Reshus HaYachid. Now, let me ask you a question. What were to happen if someone were to put schach on top of these boards? So normally you would say, no, you have to have two walls and then a tefach. No, based on the rule of Migoy, on Shabbos, since for Shabbos it's called a Reshus HaYachid, it's going to be good for Sukah. And Ataki said it. That Zicha Gavazam Ksheira. So we have three applications of Migu. Okay, you have the normal Chachamim Sukkah, two walls and a tefach. And you put schach on it. Migu, that this is considered a proper Sukkah during Shabbos, that's also called a Reshus HaYachid. Case number two is when you have the Mavui Mefulish with only a Lechi. And you put schach on top of it. Since for Hilchas Shabbos, it's considered a Reshus HaYachid biblically. So Shabbos Sukkahs, it's going to be a kosher Sukkah. You don't even have the tefach third wall, and it's parallel. It's not even right angled. And the third case of Pasiberois, why did Rava have to say all three? Vitzricha, because the Iyash meaning only the case of Mavui is beginning with the case of Mavui. The second case, the case that we have on top of the Amid. Mishum, at least over there, you have two defanis that Aliyah said. Now, guys, I know that it's not right angle, and we began today to say that the two wall with the minimum third, better right angle, but at least it's two proper walls. But concerning Pasi Berois, not a single full wall. The Lekash, they defanis Aliyah said maybe loy. Not maybe loy, it's not good for Hilchas Shabbos, it's good, but to stretch it for Sukkah, Mamish, a single vant. Because at least on each direction, on each side, you have a shame. There is something, because you have, like we mentioned, each side of the right of those pasiverois, not a tefach, an amo. You have an amo, epis you have on each direction. Because mishum deika shame, arba defanis. When you are standing inside of it, you can argue you are enclosed from all the sides. No matter which direction you look, on the ends there is the pasiverois. Avol sicha chagaba mavui. The lekes, shame, arba defanis. You only really have two proper walls. So maybe not. So that's why he needed to say them both. And now we're going back to this concept. There, guys, Shabbos is more chamer than Sukkah. So it makes sense to say, it's easier to say that since for Hilchas Shabbos, you're not violating. So then, Shabbos Sukkah, it's good for a Sukkah because you're going from Chamur to Kal, Michamirta lekilta. Avol, but to go Mikilta lechamirta, which was the first statement we began, huge chiddush. You have two, a right angle and a tefach. Right angle and a tefach, even if all you need is three walls for Shabbos to make that area a Reshus HaYachid, you need three full walls. So just because God, Halach L'Moshe Misinai, the Eibishter said that for Sukkah it's considered a three-walled Sukkah, who says that we're going to go from Sukkah to Shabbos? For that, Rabbi needed to say, we say that as well. Eimeloi Tzricham. Beautiful. Okay. Moving on to the next din in the Mishnah. Mishnah Daf Beis. And that is V'shechamasa meruba mitzilasa. That if there's more sunlight than shade, it's possible. Now the question will be, what happens if you have a sukkah that has more sunlight than shade, but it's not because the schach is not dense enough. The schach is gewaldig, but the walls are not solid. Let's read it. If the end result is not good, you have more sunlight, chamasa machmas sichuch, v'loy machmas defanois, that the only invalidation of the sukkah is if there is more sunlight. You know why? Because the schach is too sparse, if that's the word. That is where you have the invalidation, like the picture. Sparse, thank you. But if there is more sunlight, not because of the schach wise, the schach blocks more sun. It creates more shade than sun. But why, if you go into the sukkah, the sukkah looks like there's a lot of sunlight because the walls are not solid.
So the question is because we don't have we have less shade, or because the wall is not considered a wall because it's kind of a screen? What's the question?
So is there a psul is the din of it has to be tzilasa meruba mechamasa? Is that a din in the schach or is that a din in the sukkah? If it's a din in the schach, then the schach is dense enough.
What about the din in the wall? I mean, if you have a good asik situation where the wall is, let's say, 10 tfachim, and the sun's coming through all that airspace.
No, so what Sukah is just pointing out that this is a common case because you don't need to build lechatchila. You don't have to build walls going all the way up. We say if you have 10 tfachim height, today with all the chumras, you say good asik. Everyone says good asik. You go up. No, it's very common for such a thing to happen.
So a wall is screen wall, like you put like a.
Or Shlomo is saying a screen wall, a non-solid wall. We learned on Amadal, if you have a wall that's only, guys, just to know, a wall that's only vertical or only horizontal, we learned this is not ideal. But a trellis, which is very common today, a trellis means that, I don't think the word is trellis, that you have, as long as
Lattice.
Lattice is very common because by a lattice, it's going in two directions. It doesn't have to be on the side. It can be like this. As long as it's lattice, it's lechatchila good. The holes in between, you have to use lavud. All of these things are non-solid walls, correct, Sukah? And there, the fact will be that in the sukkah, there's going to be more sunlight than shade. So the Tanakama holds, and we paskin like the Chachamim, clear, that it's okay. It's okay. But Rabbi Yoshe Zatana, no, that the invalidation, if not a taish, the psul, is even if the reason why there's more sunlight is because the walls are non-solid. Omar Rabbi Yemer Bar Shalemia, in the name of Abaya, my Talmud Rabbi Yoshia. Because, now this is a very big chiddush. Guys, we don't paskin like this, but let's understand what he's saying. And really, Shlemi, that's going to answer your question. Like, what's the problem? How do you word the problem? Because since it says, we're quoting a pasuk at the end of Parshas Pekudei, V'sakoyso al ha'aron es ha'paroiches, there we're speaking about the moving of the Mishkan in the Midbar. And when we set it back up, look at the words. So the setting up the Mishkan. So you set up the Kodesh HaKodshim, and then you put the paroiches. Really, it's to block that people should not be able to see inside the Kodesh Kodshim. But the words that the Torah uses, V'sakoyso. V'sakoyso means like schach. No, just on the shot, I don't know how they teach it in the English Chumash. You should screen it. V'sakoyso means separate it from your visual. But the Torah, now guys, the paroiches is not put on top, right? The paroiches is put on the side. It's a wall. It's the fact that the Torah uses the word schach for a wall. Paroiches mechitza v'yet v'kokari rachmanas chacha alma mechitza kischach be'inon. Once we know that there's a din in the schach, that the schach has to provide more shade than sunlight. Since the Torah one time calls a wall the lashon v'sakoysa v'lashon schach, so the dinim of the schach go into the wall. The big topic that the Rishonim speak about, how far do we go? One of the dinim of schach that people know is it has to be gedulei karka. And now disconnected. It may not be something that's makabel tuma. Are we going to say that according to Rabbi Yoshia, all of those limitations for the schach, do they go to the walls or not? That's the big debate over here. Okay, V'Rabbanan. Now the Rabbanan just want to tell you that the reason why the Torah uses the words V'sakoyso, even though we're speaking about something that's being hung vertically, it's not hung on top. The Paroiches was standing to separate the Kodesh from the Kodesh HaKodshim. No, Hahu the Nechu Beipurta the Mechsek Schach. The Paroiches is called Schach because the Paroiches on the top was bent over slightly inwards. No, it's not a curtain that it just went to the top perfect. I'm talking about the Mishkan. The Paroiches was bent, so it was bent over a little bit inwards. So you can argue that since it bent inside the Kodesh HaKodshim, you can argue that it was a little bit of a schach over over the Kodesh HaKodshim area. Okay, Amar Abai. Now, says Abai, I want you to know that Rebbe and Rabbi Yoshia, all Tanoim, and Rabbi Yehuda, and Reb Shimon, and Rabban Gamliel, and Beis Shammai, and Rabbi Eliezer, and Achedim. Don't be afraid, it will be easy. We're going to go through every single one. Kulu Sfirolahu. They all have the same principle. What is the principle? Sukah diras keva bu'inun. A sukkah must be fit to be a fixed dwelling. Mamish, almost the opposite of what we learned on Daf Beis, if you remember, when we had the three Amoraim explaining why do the Chachamim say that a sukkah may not be taller than 20 amas. So the third one, right, that was Shitas Rava, that he said that we dafke wanted to be something of more temporary nature. These Tanoim hold, and by the way, that's the Rabbi Yehuda. Why Rabbi Yehuda doesn't care if it's more than 20 amas. Adarabba, you're going to have to make stronger walls, even the better. A good thing to point out that sometimes Chazal, they quote, the Gemara will quote many Tanaim, and they'll say that Kulu Amru Davar Echad. Kulu Amru Davar Echad means they taka have the same opinion. All of these Tanoim, it's not Kulu Amru Davar Echad. They don't all hold one of the other. They each one spoke about a different din. Lav Dafka one agrees with the other, but they're all based on the same premise, which is that a sukkah has to be more kavua than aray. Now, how that expresses itself in halacha, each one gave another din. And let's go. So let's go. Number one is Rebbe. We're going through the Seder, right? The first one he mentioned was Rebbe, then Rabbi Yoshe. Rebbe, Omer, Kol, Sukah, She'ein Ba, Arba Amas, Al Arba Amas, Psula. Rebbe argues with Shitas Beis Hillel, argues with Shitas Beis Shammai. A sukkah that's 6 by 6 tvachim or 7 by 7 tvachim is not enough. What is the general underlining machlokes? Well, whether a sukkah has to be fit to be a fixed dwelling. No one ba'ofen kavua will live in it even by a 7 by 7. And that's taka the reason why Rabbi says it has to be at least arba amas. And we learned in the beginning of the Masechta that whole brayso with the 10 dinim all about bias, that a bias taka has to be dalad by dalad. And the Gemara says everyone agrees to that. Everyone agrees that a bias has to be dalad by dalad. It's only the Shamim Yisrael say a sukkah doesn't have to be like a bias. A sukkah is something that's diras aray.
What is the
Amma is either 6 tvachim or 5 tvachim or 6 tvachim and half an etzbah. Okay. Now, in English, it's 18 or 19 inches. Okay. Rabbi Yoshia is the one that we just said. In other words, the fact that Rabbi Yoshia doesn't allow for you, Tzvika, to live in a sukkah that the walls are not solid. You know something? In people's homes, your walls are solid. He's not negating the din of good asik. He's not negating the din of lavud if you have a lattice. No, but you need that the sukkah should be fit for a fixed dwelling. You go live fixed in an area where the walls are halachically walls, but the poil mamish, they're open. They allow more sunlight. It's not called fixed. You don't feel protected. You don't feel private in there, etc. Rabbi Yehuda is the way we explained Taka the first Mishnah. The Tanan, Sukah Daf Beis. Sukah shigavoy lamayla mechaf amo psula, and Rabbi Yehuda machsher. The Gemara is not even speaking out that this is following Rava. Taka, Rava is the third shita, the third amoida, that the Chachamim hold, you can't have more than 20 amas because then the walls have to be solid, have to be, and we don't want, and Rabbi Yehuda does want. Now, it's not that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that if the sukkah is very short, so you made flimsy walls, it's not good. We're not saying that. No, that's why, again, it's not kulu amru davar echad. We're saying that kula sfira lahu, that the more kavua a sukkah becomes, the better it is. Now, what are the red lines? Everyone can have different red lines. Next, Rab Shimon the Tanya. We just learned this again. We keep on repeating. Yeah, our Mishnah is only the Chachamim. 2 walls plus the third a tefach. Rab Shimon holds, no, 3 walls plus a tefach. In other words, there's a certain amount of kivius. Dafke besukasei shal Rab Shimon. Beis kil chasan the gimel fil tefach. Rab Shimon says no. Gimel kil chasan the dalad fil tefach. Farvas, why? Because Rab Shimon wants that every side should have a wall, even though the fourth is only a tefach. But again, it's more closed. It's more kavua. Now, Rabban Gamliel the Tanya, another din that ha'oisa sukasei b'reish hagola. If you build your sukkah on the top of a wagon, you're going on mefsoyim. So today you have it on the back of a truck, or if you build it b'reish hasfina, also l'shem shemayim, with tzoyim, going on a boat to do it, and so is it a good sukkah? Now, the chesaron of each one is a little bit different, Rashi says. But Rosh Hasfina, Rashi says, it's very windy. There's a higher chance that the sukkah during sukkahs will be blown down. On the Rosh Ha'agala, it's not that windy, but the very fact that the Agala is moving, it's in motion, it makes it less fixed. So Take, the Rabbi Akiva says it's good. The Rabbi Gamliel is Paisel. And Rabbi Akiva's not, and why is he Paisel? Because it's not called Kavua. You go live, today you have mobile homes. Okay, it's not Kavua. People live in boats.
What if you live in an area where you know for sure it's going to be very windy and
we're
very,
going to get there soon,
it's not going to stand?
We're going to get, don't worry, we're getting it. We can't unpackage also because but the Gemara is doing something, and that's the Amru Davar Echad or Kula Sfidalu. We're just showing that there are general premises that you begin to understand the Machlekes Tanoim by the premise, and there's many, many more nuances. Let's go back. Beishamai Detran, Misha Hoyeroshim Ruba Besukah, Vishulchan Mateicha Bayis. And we already again learned this on Daf Gimel, that really there are two arguments between Beishamai and Beisilel. There's an issue of the sukkah can be humongous, but since the table is outside, Shema Yemashech. There is also an argument of what's the minimum size sukkah. Now again, we just said that the Rebbe said 4 amas by 4 amas because it has to be more kavua. Within Beishamai and Beisilel says only 6 by 6 tvachim. It has to be big enough only for Rosh Verubai. Beishamai at least adds a shulchan. Even there, Lefi Yerech, it's Lefi Yerech. He wants it to be more fixed. So Beishamai Plaislim is Machshirin. Why are Beishamai Plaislim? Because at least it should be big enough to accommodate the shulchan, in making it relatively more fixed. Rabbi Eliezer did Tanan ha'oise Sukah kimin tzrif. Tzrif is a conical hut. Tzrif is a round structure in which the walls and the roof are the same. Because if you have a hut, right, guys, and from Beit Zayton, a teepee, I don't know what it's called, the Indians, they make you think they lived like this. So from all the sides, in other words, where is the roof and where is the wall? That's not this. Okay, nishdas, not that picture. Or even if it's not from all the sides, the wall and the roof is the same. Sometimes you have a normal vertical wall, a gleichavan. Leaning on it is this. Leaning on this is this angled wall. Here also, where does the wall begin? Where does the roof begin?
What is when it's rounded? Is also only one wall. There's no two walls.
Wait. 1 second. So if you make a sukkah like a tzrif, from all the sides, you cannot distinguish between wall and roof. Or even if that problem is only on one side, so you have a normal vertical wall. But then you lean against the vertical wall, this slanted, again, that's the conical hut. Because here from all the sides. And then the other cases, like we mentioned, so Rabbi Eliezer Poisel, why? Lefi she'ein lo gag. Ein lo gag means, forget about the halacha of how do you measure the wall, from where does the gag begin. It's not called fixed. It doesn't appear like a fixed structure. And the Chachamim are machshirim. Why are they machshir? Because it's a sukkah, it's diras aray. And the final, acherim, which is Rabbi Meir, what we call him acherim here, the Tanya, acherim oimirim. Sukah hasuya kishoivech. If a sukkah is completely circular, you see by the tzrif, like the picture Kevin put up, it doesn't have to be circular. But it can be a conical hut because from all the sides, it's like, there's no wall and roof, they merge one into the other. What happens if you have a round structure? Round. Why? Simply because and in a fixed residence, people don't live that way. People live in an area that has corners. And we'll stop over here, and just to make it clear that we don't paskin like this, we actually paskin that a round sukkah is okay, as we don't paskin like Rabbi Yoshia. You see, sometimes we do paskin like Beishamai, we don't paskin like Rebbe. And now the big question will be, now that we mentioned that we have the minimum size of the wall, 7 by 7 plus a tefach, if you have a round structure, how large does it have to be for you to say that it's fitting the shiurim of the 2 walls and a tefach? Some math, Gemara, God willing, tomorrow.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I would
Rabbi,
argue that the Rabbi Yehuda is different, by the way.
One more time.
That in all the other cases, it possibled a different type of sukkah, because you could say it's not enough of a dwelling. Rabbi Yehuda didn't pass on anything. He said it's kosher if it's more than 20 amas. That's very different. He's not saying that
very good
has
point. Very good point.
Anyhow.
In other words, that's the kulos lahu, because since Rabbi Yehuda looks at the permanency of the sukkah as something advantageous.
Well, he's just saying that it doesn't puzzle it, but he doesn't
Correct.
say that you need it.
Correct. Good point. Well taken.
Yeah.
It still fits. That's why it's a very general statement. Yeah, Tzvika, you were asking something. Where did you go? All right.